On a Sunday morning in December of 1941, the USS West Virginia was on the bottom of Pearl Harbor, with her sailors still trapped inside her. 2 years and 10 months later, on a black night in a strait most Americans had never heard of, she was going to answer for it. 3 o'clock in the morning, October 25th, 1944, Surigao Strait. The water between the islands is black, not dark. Black. The kind of black that swallows sound before it reaches you, that makes a man on deck feel like he is standing at the edge of the world, with nothing underneath him but more of the same. The USS West Virginia rides that water in silence. Her guns are trained out into the darkness, aimed at nothing a human eye can see. Her crew is at battle stations. They have been at battle stations for hours. And every one of them, from the ensign on the bridge to the seaman feeding shells in the magazine, knows exactly where this ship has been before. 2 years and 10 months earlier, she was on the bottom, Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, a Sunday morning. 7 Japanese torpedoes tore into her port side in less than 15 minutes. 2 bombs punched through her decks. She listed. She burned. And then she settled into the harbor mud with her sailors still inside. Her in the compartments the water reached before the men could. They pulled her up. That is the sentence that hides everything. They sent divers down into oil and diesel and bodies. They patched her hull underwater. They pumped her out compartment by compartment. They cut away what could not be saved and rebuilt what could. They gave her new guns, new radar, new fire control. And they sent her back to war. Now, in the middle of a night most Americans could not have found on a map, she is waiting. She is not alone. 5 more battleships ride the darkness beside her. Maryland, Tennessee, California, Pennsylvania, Mississippi. 6 ships in a line drawn straight across the top of a narrow strip of water, and every one of them carries a history the modern Navy has already begun to forget. Because in the wardrooms of the fast carriers, in the officer clubs at Pearl and San Francisco, these ships have a nickname, the Old Ladies. It is not affectionate. It is the name you give something you have already decided is finished. By the fall of 1944, the battleship is no longer the queen of the sea. The aircraft carrier has taken that crown, and everyone in the fleet knows it. Battles are decided by pilots launching from decks 100 miles from the enemy. Over horizons a battleship cannot see across. The great gun duel, 2 lines of steel hammering each other with shells the weight of a small automobile, belongs to another war, to Jutland, to grainy photographs in Naval Academy classrooms, to history. So the old battleships have been given a second-line job. They sit off invasion beaches and shell Japanese bunkers. They soften the coral so the Marines can land. It is vital work. It is not glamorous work. And it has shaped a decision that will matter more on this one night than anyone in the fleet has yet understood. because their job is to shell the shore. Their magazines are packed, mostly, with high explosive bombardment shells, the kind you fire at a beach. Only a limited number of armor-piercing rounds ride in the racks below decks. Only a limited number of the shells you would need if, against every expectation of modern naval doctrine, you had to punch through the hull of an enemy battleship. The man who has laid these 6 ships across the top of Surigao Strait is Rear Admiral Jesse B. Oldendorf. He is 57 years old, career officer. Not flashy, not famous. A man his contemporaries describe as calm to the point of coldness, the kind of officer who does not raise his voice because he does not have to. His orders came down through the chain of command from Vice Admiral Thomas C. Kincaid, 56, commander of the 7th Fleet, the naval force protecting General MacArthur's landings on Leyte. And behind Kincaid, back at Pearl Harbor in the great headquarters on Makalapa Hill, is Fleet Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, 59 years old. Commander-in-Chief Pacific. Nimitz is the man who believed in these ships, in a fleet that was rushing toward the future of fast carriers. He was one of the senior commanders who kept finding work for the old battleships instead of writing them off. He understood something the wardroom jokes about the old ladies missed. He understood that a slow ship with 16-inch guns and armor thick enough to laugh at a bomb is still, in the right situation, the most terrifying object on the ocean. He kept them for the beaches. He kept them quietly for anything else that might come. Anything else is coming tonight. But before you meet what is coming, you have to understand one more thing about the ships waiting in the dark. 5 of the 6 were at Pearl Harbor. Read that sentence again and let it land the way it deserves to land. 5 of the 6 American battleships waiting in Surigao Strait on the night of October 25th, 1944, were the ships Japan had tried to destroy at the very start of the war. The West Virginia went to the bottom of the harbor. The California went to the bottom of the harbor. The Tennessee was pinned in place by the wreck of another battleship and burned through the day. The Maryland took bomb hits and watched the Oklahoma capsize beside her. The Pennsylvania sat in dry dock as bombs fell around her. Only the Mississippi missed that morning. She was in the Atlantic, escorting convoys. 5 ships that had been left for finished. 5 ships that had been pulled from the mud of an American harbor, stitched back together in dry docks from Puget Sound to Norfolk, given new eyes in the form of radar. Their 1941 crews had never heard of and pointed west across an ocean. They have crossed that ocean now. They have shelled beaches from Kwajalein to Guam to Peleliu. They have earned the nickname Old Ladies and worn it without complaint. And now, at 3 a.m, in a strait most of their crews cannot pronounce, they are trained out into black water waiting for something none of them fully believes is coming. Something is coming. Turn away from the American line. Cross 15 miles of dark water. Stand on a different bridge. Vice Admiral Shoji Nishimura commands the southern force of the Imperial Japanese Navy. He is 54 years old. A career surface officer from an era when Japanese naval doctrine still believed the decisive battle would be a gunfight between battle lines, the way Tsushima had been in 1905. Men who served under Nishimura remember him as reserved, formal, not warm, not cruel, a man who spoke little and expected his orders to be understood the first time. And here is a detail that historians have handled carefully for 80 years, because the evidence for it is not as firm as the story makes it feel. It is widely believed and repeated in many accounts that Nishimura's only son, a young naval aviator, was killed in the Philippines the year before. It is believed. It is not proven beyond question. But the men who studied Nishimura after the war came to think that whatever he carried onto his flagship the night of October 24th, he sailed with a kind of stillness that officers around him could feel. Because he is sailing into a plan that is already coming apart. The Japanese operation is called Sho-Go 1. Victory Operation 1. It is the last real gamble the Imperial Navy has left. 3 forces are converging on the American landings at Leyte from 3 directions, hoping to fool, to distract, to catch the American transports in a pincer and destroy them. Nishimura is the southern jaw of that pincer. His job is to force his way up Surigao Strait, break into Leyte Gulf from below, and smash the American troop ships anchored there. On paper, his force is strong. 2 battleships, the Yamashiro, his flagship, 27 years old, and the Fuso, her sister, 2 years older. Both had been refit and modernized in the 1930s, but both are slow. Both are lightly protected against modern shells, and both are the kind of battleship that would not have been sent into a first-line engagement in 1942, let alone 44. With them, the heavy cruiser Mogami and 4 destroyers. He is supposed to be coordinating with a second Japanese force under Vice Admiral Kiyohide Shima, coming up behind him with more cruisers and destroyers. The timing is meant to bring them into the strait together, or nearly so, and to converge with the far larger center force under Admiral Takeo Kurita in Leyte Gulf itself. The timing has failed. Shima is roughly 25 nautical miles behind him and cannot close the gap in time. Kurita, to the north, has been savaged from the air and is running late. The coordinated blow is no longer coordinated. Nishimura, following his orders, and perhaps following something quieter and colder than orders, does not slow. He does not turn. He does not signal to wait. He steams into the strait. Surigao Strait is a funnel. To reach Leyte Gulf, ships coming up from the south must squeeze into a corridor of water lined on both sides by land, a corridor that narrows the farther in you go. There is no room to maneuver. There is no room to run. And on this night, there is no moon. The Americans know he is coming. They have known for hours. Reconnaissance aircraft picked up his force in daylight. Radio intercepts confirmed his course. Oldendorf has had the whole afternoon to lay his trap, and he has laid it with the patience of a man who has been given, for the first time in his career, exactly the situation the naval academies have been drawing on chalkboards for 40 years. He has laid his 6 battleships in a line straight across the top of the funnel, across the exit, so that any column of Japanese ships trying to break through will be pointed directly into the broadside of every American battleship at once. There is a name for this. Naval officers have dreamed about it since before the age of steam. It is called crossing the T. It is the position that lets your whole line fire while the enemy can barely answer with his forward guns alone. It has almost never been achieved in the modern era because modern warfare, with its aircraft and its radar and its smoke, almost never allows 2 fleets to meet in the classical way anymore. Oldendorf has it. He has it perfectly. And Nishimura is steaming his column directly into the crossed bar of it in the dark, with no idea how completely the trap has already closed around him. But before Nishimura's battleships ever reach the American line, they will have to run something else, because between the mouth of the strait and the 6 old ladies waiting at the top of the funnel, Oldendorf has strung a gauntlet. 39 PT boats scattered along the length of the strait, plywood torpedo boats, small and fast and loaded with young men who have been told to find the Japanese and radio their position no matter what else happens. Destroyer squadrons waiting in the darkness on both sides of the corridor, engines quiet, torpedoes in their tubes, prepared to slash in from the flanks the moment the Japanese column passes. Cruisers ready behind them. And at the top, in the black water, at the exit of the funnel, the 6 ships that had been raised from the mud of Pearl Harbor, waiting for a battle almost no one in the modern Navy believed would ever happen again. Down in the magazines of the West Virginia, of the Tennessee, of the California, the racks hold fewer armor-piercing shells than they should. Oldendorf knows this. He has issued the order that his gunners are to fire slowly, deliberately, to make every salvo count. There will be no wasted rounds tonight. The men do not know yet what they are about to fire on. The men on the Yamashiro do not know what is waiting at the top of the strait. And Nishimura, standing on his bridge in the dark, watching the black shapes of the coastline close in on both sides of his flagship, keeps steaming north, toward the ghosts. The first ships to find him are the smallest ships in the fight. Just after 10:30 on the night of October 24th, a PT boat moving slowly in the dark near the southern mouth of the strait picks up something on radar. Large contacts, multiple, moving north at a steady speed that only warships move at. The young lieutenant on that boat does what he was trained to do. He sends the report. The report climbs the chain from one PT boat to another, from the boats to the destroyers, from the destroyers to Oldendorf's flagship. Within minutes, 39 plywood torpedo boats scattered along 30 miles of black water are radioing pieces of the same picture, and Oldendorf, sitting at the top of the funnel, is watching that picture come together on his own radar screens. He knows Nishimura's course. He knows his speed. He knows how many ships. He knows how they are spaced. He knows all of it, hours before Nishimura will know that anyone knows anything. The PT boats attack. They dart in from the shadows of the coast. Engines roaring, launch their torpedoes at ranges the manuals would call optimistic, and run for the darkness before the Japanese guns can find them. Most of the torpedoes miss. A few strike home but do no serious damage. 10 PT boats are hit by Japanese return fire. 3 sailors die. 1 boat is lost. And here is the thing the Japanese lookouts, watching the little wooden boats scurry away into the black, do not understand. The torpedoes were never the point. The point was the radio. For 4 hours, the PT boats have been feeding Nishimura's exact position into the American command net. Course, speed, range. Every zig, every zag, every change of formation. Oldendorf has been reading the Japanese admiral's mind through a radar screen, and the Japanese admiral has no idea he is being read. Nishimura keeps going. Now the destroyers come, starting just before 3 in the morning, and continuing for the next hour. American destroyer squadrons slip out of the darkness in successive waves. Destroyer Squadron 54 goes in first. From the east and the west, torpedo tubes trained out. Then Destroyer Squadron 24. Then Destroyer Squadron 56, last and closest. They race in on their runs, engines straining, decks trembling. They close the range in silence. They launch. And then they turn hard and run, laying smoke before the Japanese can bring their big guns to bear. The torpedoes go into the water in numbers that even now, 80 years later, are difficult to visualize. Dozens of them, slashing through the dark toward a column of ships whose lookouts are trying and failing to see anything at all. The first ship they find is the Fuso. She is Nishimura's second battleship, nearly 30 years old, slow, old, and she takes torpedoes on her starboard side that tear her hull open below the waterline. She lists. Fires break out along her length. She falls out of the column. She has not fired a single meaningful shot at anything. For years after the war, sailors told a story about the Fuso. They said she had been hit so hard that she broke in half, and both halves burned separately on the surface for a long time before sinking. The story was told in memoirs. It was written into histories. It sat in the record for more than 70 years. It was wrong. Modern surveys of the wreck and and careful rereading of the eyewitness accounts have shown that the Fuso did not break in two. She rolled over, burning, and she sank whole. What the American sailors saw and remembered as two halves of a battleship were almost certainly two separate burning wrecks on the surface at once, ships from other parts of the Japanese column, seen in the dark and confused into a single terrible image. The truth is smaller and stranger than the legend. She simply died. The same torpedo attacks ripped through Nishimura's destroyers. 3 of them are hit in the space of minutes. The Mishishio is torn apart. The Yamagumo, the Asagumo, crippled, left dead in the water, or dragging themselves out of the fight. In the space of a few minutes, before the real battle has begun, Nishimura has lost a battleship and most of his escort. His force is being erased around him by an enemy his lookouts can barely see. And still, he does not turn. The Yamashiro pushes north through the wreckage of her own squadron, past the burning shapes of her sister ship, past the shattered destroyers, toward the top of the strait. Beside her, the heavy cruiser Mogami, still fighting, still underway. Behind her, a single destroyer, the Shiger, keeping station. Whatever waits at the top of the funnel, Nishimura is going to reach it. But before he does, one more piece of the picture has to be told. Because the American gauntlet is not a clean weapon. It is a killing machine made of ships firing torpedoes across each other's paths in total darkness. And on the night of October 25th, in the middle of it, something goes wrong. The USS Albert W. Grant, an American destroyer of Squadron 56, drives in through the smoke to launch her torpedoes. She fires her spread. And then, as she turns to run, she passes into a stretch of water where the Japanese are firing back at every muzzle flash they can see, and where American cruisers up strait are pouring shells at the Japanese column, and where the ranges are so close and the darkness so complete that no gunner on either side can be sure whose ship is whose. The Grant is hit. She is hit again and again. She takes 22 shell hits in a few terrible minutes. Some of them are Japanese. Some of them, examined afterward, are undeniably American. 6-inch shells fired by American cruisers who could not see what they were shooting at through the smoke and the dark and the confusion of the fight. 34 of her men are killed. 94 are wounded. The Grant does not sink. Her surviving crew fight the fires, plug the holes, keep her afloat, drag her out of the strait. But she carries something home with her that does not appear in most tellings of the battle. She carries the truth that the crossed T was not a clean geometry lesson on the water. It was a night fight in a narrow channel where friends killed friends in the dark, and the reports were written carefully afterward, and where the men on the Grant paid a price the victory chapters do not always mention. Above her, up strait, the Japanese column is now 3 ships: Yamashiro, Mogami, Shigur, They are still moving north. The American destroyer squadrons pull back. They have done their work. They have killed a battleship. They have killed 3 destroyers. And they have painted in torpedo wakes and radar returns a picture so complete that Oldendorf on his flagship can see the last shape of the Japanese force, as if it were drawn on paper. He gives the order to prepare to fire. 6 miles up the strait, at the top of the funnel, the 6 old battleships that have been waiting in the dark for hours receive that order in silence. The gunnery officers check their solutions. The radar. The radar operators watch their scopes. In the magazines, sailors count the armor-piercing shells they have and know the numbers by heart. The West Virginia's Mark 8 fire control radar, the newest and most advanced set in the fleet, reaches out across the black water and finds the Yamashiro at more than 22,000 yards, nearly 13 miles, in pitch darkness, without a moon, without a searchlight, without a single visible reference on the sea. She locks on the bridge of the Yamashiro. Nishimura keeps steaming north. His lookouts can see nothing ahead but water and the outline of the coast. He has no radar of the kind the Americans have. He does not know what is waiting. He does not know that in the darkness ahead, 13 miles away, 8 16-inch guns that spent Sunday morning on the mud of Pearl Harbor have just swung onto the shape of his flagship and are ready to fire. 3:52 in the morning. The ghosts open their eyes. 3:52 in the morning. The West Virginia fires 8 16-inch guns, the same guns that had gone underwater at Pearl Harbor, that had sat for months in the harbor mud while divers worked around them in the dark, swing onto a target no human eye on that ship can see, and let go. The muzzle flashes light the strait for a full second. The pressure wave rolls across the water like a slap, and 13 miles up the funnel, before the sound of the guns has reached him, the first American salvo of the last battleship duel in history comes down on Vice Admiral Shoji Nishimura's flagship. It hits. Read that again, because it is almost too neat to believe. The first full salvo, fired blind in total darkness by a ship that had been raised from the mud of an American harbor, lands on the Yamashiro at 22,800 yards. The Tennessee opens up next. Then the California, both of them Pearl Harbor survivors, both of them carrying the same Mark 8 fire control radar, both of them firing 12 14-inch guns instead of the West Virginia's 16-inch, but both of them accurate almost from the first salvo. Down the American line, the other 3 battleships try to join in, and here is where the story of the ghosts of Pearl Harbor gets more complicated and more honest than the legend usually allows. The Maryland cannot get a radar lock the way her 3 sisters can. Her fire control set is an older model. She solves the problem the way an old ship solves a problem. She trains her guns on the splashes of the West Virginia's shells and fires into the same patch of water. 6 salvos, blind, in effect, working off another ship's aim. The Pennsylvania cannot fire at all. She sits in the American line with her 14-inch guns loaded and her crews at battle stations, and her fire control system cannot resolve a target through the smoke and the range and the confusion of ships moving in the dark. She never gets off a shot in the whole engagement. She had been in dry dock at Pearl Harbor when the bombs fell. She had watched the harbor burn. She had crossed the Pacific and shelled beaches and come to Surigao Strait for a reckoning. And when the reckoning came, her guns stayed silent. Not every ghost got to speak. The Mississippi, the one ship in Oldendorf's line that had not been at Pearl Harbor, fires exactly 1 full salvo. 12 14-inch shells sent into the darkness at a target already being torn apart by 4 other battleships. That salvo does not decide anything. It does not need to. It matters for a different reason, and the reason will only become clear when the shooting stops. For now, out on the black water 13 miles north of the American line, the Yamashiro is dying. She is one ship pointed the wrong way at the mouth of a trap. She can bring only her forward turrets to bear, because that is all the geometry of the cross T allows her. The American ships laid across the top of the funnel fire full broadsides. The Yamashiro answers with a fraction of her guns and takes broadsides in return. Shells the weight of a small automobile come down on her again and again. Her upperworks are torn open. Fires break out along her length. Her secondary guns are wrecked one by one. She lists, she corrects, she lists again. She keeps firing. That is the part that the tellings sometimes flatten. Nishimura's flagship, alone, outgunned, aimed the wrong way, with no chance of breaking through and no chance of turning in time, does not stop shooting. She lands hits. American ships take fire in return. The Yamashiro fights the way an old battleship in the last minutes of her life fights, which is badly and honestly, and to the end. American cruisers close the range and add their guns. American destroyers race in and put torpedoes into her hull. At 4:19 in the morning, the Yamashiro rolls over onto her starboard side and goes down. Nishimura goes down with her. He does not signal for rescue. He does not transfer his flag. Minutes before the end, he sends one final radio message to the ships behind him. We proceed until total annihilation of enemy ships. Then the water closes over the bridge. Whatever he carried onto that bridge, whatever he believed about his son, about the plan that had already come apart, about the darkness ahead of him in the strait, he takes it into the water with the ship. Of the crew of the Yamashiro, more than 1,600 men die. 10 survive. The Mogami, the heavy cruiser, is a burning wreck by then. She has been hit by American cruiser fire, has collided with another Japanese cruiser coming up behind, and drifts south in the strait as a torch. She will be scuttled in the morning. Only the destroyer Shigur turns and runs. She survives the battle. She is the only ship of Nishimura's southern force to make it out. 6 ships came up the strait. 1 goes home. And then the Mississippi fires her last salvo. It is late in the action. The Yamashiro is already gone or going. The decision is made. The battle is over, except for the finishing. And out of the American line, the one battleship that had not been at Pearl Harbor sends 12 shells into the darkness. The guns fall silent. They do not know it on the Mississippi. They do not know it anywhere on the water that night. But those 12 shells are the last salvo ever fired by one battleship at another battleship in the history of the world. Battleships would fire again after Surigao. They would shell beaches. They would shell coastlines into the Korean War and beyond. But no battleship would ever again point her main guns at another battleship and pull the triggers. That kind of fight ended here. The story that began at Hampton Roads in 1862, when the Monitor and the Merrimac fought each other in Chesapeake Bay and changed naval warfare forever, ends in a strait in the southern Philippines at 4 in the morning on October 25th, 1944. 82 years of steel battleships firing at steel battleships. Jutland, Tsushima, the North Atlantic, the Java Sea, all of it closes here. The door has never opened again. The ships that closed it were the ships Japan had tried to kill first. The West Virginia had been on the bottom of Pearl Harbor. The California had been on the bottom of Pearl Harbor. The Tennessee, the Maryland, the Pennsylvania had all burned that Sunday morning. 5 of the 6 American battleships in Oldendorf's line at Surigao Strait were the ships the Japanese Navy had come to Hawaii specifically to destroy. 2 of them had sunk. All of them had been counted as lost, or nearly lost in the first accounting of the war. They had been raised, they had been rebuilt, they had been sent west across an ocean, and on the last night in the history of the world that battleships fought battleships, they were the ships that fired the opening shots and the closing shots. There is no way to write that down as a coincidence and have it feel like one. The men who fought the battle did not stand around thinking about the history of it. On the bridge of the West Virginia, on the Tennessee, on the California, the officers watched their radar screens and their gunnery reports and understood that they had done a piece of work. In the turrets and the magazines below decks, the sailors, most of them boys in their late teens and early 20s, understood that the guns had fired and stopped firing and that they were still alive. On the Albert W. Grant, 34 families were about to receive telegrams that would not tell them, and would never tell them fully, what had happened to their sons in a strait most of them had never heard of. On the water at the bottom of Surigao Strait, more than 4,000 Japanese sailors were dead. And in a flag plot on Makalapa Hill, Fleet Admiral Chester W. Nimitz read the reports as they came in and understood, before most of his own navy did, what the old ladies had just done. The ships he had believed in had won a battle the modern navy did not believe was possible anymore. In a night action, at close range, with radar and guns and torpedoes and the discipline of an old kind of fight, 6 ships everyone had written off as second line had crossed the T of an enemy battle line and destroyed it. They had also closed a door that will not open again. There will be more naval battles. There will be more ships. There will not be another night like this one, because there will not be another era in which 2 lines of steel battleships come at each other with their main guns and duel in the dark. Missiles will come. Aircraft carriers will get bigger. The battleship itself will fade from the fleets of the world within a generation. But on the night of October 25th, 1944, the ships that had been left for dead at the start of the war fired the last shots of a kind of warfare that had lasted almost a century. They called them worthless. They called them the old ladies. They had one fight left in them. It turned out to be the only one that mattered.